Welcome to the Tactical Cyber Podcast, where we transform strategic cyber insights into actionable tactics for everyday implementation. Join your hosts, retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Darren Mott and Risk Advisory Practice Leader at Warren Averett, Paul Perry. Together, they bring decades of experience from the front lines of cybersecurity and risk management to help business owners and individuals take the actions that will keep their business and personal digital data safe. Each episode, we delve into the world of cybersecurity, sharing real-world experiences, expert interviews, and practical tips to safeguard your digital landscape. It's time to move past cyber strategies and start working cyber tactics.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another edition in 2025 of the Tactical Cyber Podcast. I'm your host, retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Darren Mott. And as always, I thank you for taking the time to watch this stream live or download it and listen to it later as a podcast or to view it in one of the YouTube or LinkedIn channels. As you can tell, I have a slight arm issue here. I had bicep tendon surgery, so I will be doing everything left-handed here, which should be entertaining in itself. Let me bring on my co-host, Paul Perry. Paul, happy Tuesday.
Darren, good to talk to you. And the excuses for pickleball have already started. I see that.
Yes, I know. Yes, you were ready to start playing, and I can't make it. So I'm also as we're doing this, I'm trying to make sure this is even running on LinkedIn. So I think, oh yeah, there you go. It even says live. So that's good. So it's going. So if you are watching on the feed and you have questions or thoughts or comments, then feel free to hit the chat button, and we'll try to answer those as we go forward. We have a special guest today. We're going to talk about hiring. We've wanted to do this for a while. The issues with trying to find skilled personnel to fill the personnel gap that we always talk about in cybersecurity. So we have an expert here to do just that, and we'll have him in a little bit. But we wanted to get into, of course, there's always news to kind of kick us off here and talk about why we even do this podcast, why we talk about these solutions to try to say, okay, this is the problem. Here's kind of what you need to do. So Paul, let's go with yours first. It's going to be the PowerSchool hack. Let me bring that article up so we can see it.
And I'm sure if you've got kids and you're listening to this has impacted you. And I remember the emails coming home related to PowerSchool being hacked. What's interesting that I've seen is the communication I got from our school system said Social Security numbers were not included. Some of the articles say that Social Security numbers were included. So it's an interesting trying to understand. Not all schools use the software, the platform the same way, right? They don't all put the same information in there. And so I have a question out to our school system to just say, hey, the articles say that Social Security numbers are included. We're saying we don't put that in there. If that's the case, that's nice to know. But I think my ultimate bigger question, and I may have put a post about this on LinkedIn in the past, is so now we've got to educate K through 12, right, on how to look for a phishing email. Right now I've got to explain to my fifth graders, if you get an email that is asking you for money, that's probably not right, right? So now we have to take this education, which is still a tactical piece, right, and we have to move into the school systems, and we have to say, look, the platform that you get some of your emails from school was hacked into. They now have your email address as a student. You potentially will get some emails that say, hey, click this link, take this action, open this device. Now we've got to have that discussion. So I've actually reached out to our school system to say, hey, is there any help we need on education? Because that, I think, is the only way to do it. Would you agree with that, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, and the interesting thing for me, and as I always look at when we're looking at these kind of things, is could they have afforded it not to happen, right? Do they make money that they could have the cybersecurity in place that this doesn't occur? So as you were talking, I was looking up, okay, what is the revenue for PowerSchool at the end of quarter 4, 2023? They had a revenue of $182 million. So I would tend to think that they probably had funds to be able to do the basics. Really, what's the basics, right? If I'm a school and my information is going to PowerSchool to be able to run all of the services that they offer to these schools to try to offload some of the requirements that they need, did anybody ever ask, have you had a cyber assessment? What's that look like? That'd be my question. And I'm going to say they probably have not, or maybe they passed, maybe they self-assessed, like in the clear defense space, they just self-assessed and said, yeah, we're good. We're working on these things we don't have. But it's, now are we going to provide identity theft protection for kids starting now?
I mean, that's the question that needs to be added to the list of questions to ask, right? I mean, I always thought children were off limits, and I realized Power School itself is not child, but
right.
It just opens up a whole nother, and I would love the opportunity for myself, you, and everybody else that's fighting the good fight, as our friend Matt Lee said, to go out and start educating folks in the school systems, the students. Start with your own kids and then work your way up or around to educating everybody. But that to me is, I saw that was bothersome. I got the emails home. I've got the understanding of what did and did not occur. And so, again, now we've got to educate younger ones, and maybe, this is a shameless plug for this podcast, but maybe that is putting together the workforce of the future, right? Those kids see this, hear this, and it's like, you know what? That's interesting. That's something I want to do. So it'll be interesting to hear what our guest has to say about how people get into this, and then how do we educate the young kids to want to do this going forward.
And the thing I would love to know at some point, which we'll probably never know, is how did it happen? Right. And I didn't really read all the articles, but I assume they haven't come out and said, we did an instant response and here's what happened. Like, we just don't know.
I have not seen it yet. If it has come out, my assumption is, did a teacher, did an adult click a link that gave up information? Did a kid do it? I don't know.
That's probably exactly.
It's interesting.
Probably exactly what happened, but not a kid. But I'm going to say it's probably one of the adult users at one of the schools did something wrong, right?
Well, and the emails are not easy to understand for a child. I still don't understand where they come up with the email address that they do. But so you would think it's not that. But again, some kid somewhere was playing. Maybe they were playing Roblox and on the same computer that they log into school for. And did it happen that way? I don't know.
Could be.
There's lots of ways.
Right. So my article is this one: the Wolf Adelstein Law Firm, which has been around since 1888, had a data breach and lost 3.5 million client records, which included, if I'm not mistaken, it included full name, social security number, employee information, identification number, medical diagnosis, medical claim information. So all sorts of HIPAA violations here as well, which is not going to go well for this particular law firm. But if this organization or this law firm has been around since 1888, has offices in New York, Chicago, San Diego, Nashville, I'm going to say they probably do okay financially, right? But where's the security to protect? How does this data get stolen? Again, we will never find out why, but I think one area that is not talked about enough, and this is self-serving on my part that we'll talk about later, but is law firms, their information is valuable. Whether they're doing from a criminal perspective, the PII here is valuable. If you're doing business type law, and you're doing business type law overseas, like in nation states, China is all up in your business because they want to know what is the deal you're looking at, because they want to know what that is so they can undercut it or do something with it. So, hopefully this is a wake up call for law firms to say, hey, we need to worry about this for us as well, and maybe we need to take some steps to go from nothing to something.
That line right there in the middle, detected suspicious activity. So they were monitoring something, right? Mm-hmm. Something was monitored, which I would argue not giving them an out, but I would say a lot of folks don't even monitor, right? They don't hear about it until they get the note or until their information shows up on the dark web and somebody hears about it. They detected suspicious activity, so they're doing something.
Yeah, true.
And that also always speaks to, you can have the best controls in the world, but one of the tenets of cybersecurity is if you are doing business globally and on the internet, you are at risk, no matter how good the controls are, right? So still something people need to continue talking about. And
I think what would be an interesting show down the road is looking at cyber protection from a counterintelligence perspective, right? So they were monitoring, so they knew something was going on. So if you create folders on your network and say, this is all our important data, and you put bogus information in it and you monitor the hell out of that particular folder. So when you see people going at it, that should identify that there's someone in the network. You've redirected them somewhere else. And it could actually go a long way to preventing this from actually occurring. But that's a topic.
That would be a great conversation.
Topic for another day. Well, with that, let us bring in today's guest, because he's been waiting anxiously since about a half hour ago. This is his first podcast ever, so we are happy to welcome on to the Tactical Cyber Podcast from the UK, Michael McQuade. And I'm supposed to say hello to his mother, Kelly. So Kelly, your son's doing well. Here he is on his first ever podcast. So Michael, welcome.
Glad to have you, Michael.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast, so thank you.
So let's get right into like, let's talk a little bit about your company. So let's start there. Like, talk about what your company, what it does, and then we'll get into some more specific questions as to how you got to that point. Because you have a great story on how you even built the business, and then some ideas on, the skill gap and getting personnel in place and why it's such a problem. And that's kind of your skill area. So give us a little bit about you and your company.
Sure. So I'll start off with myself. So it's better to start with myself to how I got to the company, because that's how the journey went. So I'm a former cybersecurity and intelligence professional with the UK government. And then I worked at Microsoft and Amazon Web Service in their data centers. And that whole journey, I was in a TS cleared security clearance environment. And how I got into recruitment industry. So I've been asked this question loads of times, and it's always a pleasure to share the journey. So in October 2023, I was approached by 3 separate recruitment agencies. Now, this was my first exposure to recruitment agencies. I'd not dealt with them previously. And all 3 agencies were looking for top secret cleared cybersecurity project managers. Now, statistically in the UK, the niche of this is about 0.1% of people that could fill that role. So the first phone call comes through, and I spoke to a young, lovely female, really bubbly personality, and the conversation was going well. And before we started talking about day rates, the person said to me that secret clearance level is higher than top secret. And anybody that knows me, I can't let things slip like that. I would end up having to pick it up. But I tried to do it in a polite, educational manner. And I said to the recruiter, it's top secret, it's the highest security clearance. And the personality done a 180, it switched. And the person said to me, nope, it's secret. I says, well, all due respect, I've been operating in this environment for X amount of years. I've got the top level security clearance. It's definitely top secret. Nope, it's secret. And I just got fed up with the call. I ended up just putting the phone down. And I just thought, I'm not going to continue this conversation. Second phone call comes through from a different recruitment company. And the recruiter said to me, we've got this job opportunity, top secret security cleared cybersecurity project manager at the National Cabinet Security Centre. Now, for those in the cyber world would know that it's the National Cyber Security Centre, which is in London, Victoria. Again, I tried to politely educate the recruiter and say it's the National Cyber Security Centre. They said, no, I'm looking at the job spec, it's National Cabinet Security Centre. And I evaluated this situation, that if somebody says something to you, like, so for example, this is the example I use, right? If somebody says to you the sky is green, you've known it to be blue your whole life. But if somebody says something to you so obvious, you have to actually think about it a bit deeply. So I'm contemplating, I'm thinking, has the UK government set up some new building that I'm unaware of? Like, have they opened next door? Like, what is this new building? And I said, is this in London, Victoria? Yes, in London, Victoria. And I went, that's definitely the National Cybersecurity Centre. And the attitude changed again. They were like, I've been doing security cleared recruitment for 2 years. And my response is, I've actually been in the building. So, where do you want to go with this conversation? And then the third phone call came through, and the recruiter said to me, I've just received this job spec this morning. I know nothing about this job. Are you interested? So all 3 phone calls got dropped. And these contracts were private contractor roles for the UK government. And they were 6-figure salaries. They were respectable salaries, certainly for UK salary standards. And something just... we've all experienced bad customer experience, right? If you've flown with an airline or you go to the supermarket, we've all experienced that. But it doesn't mean necessarily you're going to create a new airline or you're going to open a new supermarket and try and give a better customer experience. You kind of let it bypass. But this is one of these situations that I just couldn't shake. And I remember coming off these calls and I spoke to my wife and I was like, you're never going to believe it. I think I've spoke to the 3 worst recruitment agencies in the world. And then I started speaking to people in my community from past experience, from past life. And I asked them as well, I said, have you spoke to a recruiter, what's been the experience? And they said, oh, it's Mike, you're never going to believe this. Like, I've had some really bad recruiters who just don't know what they're talking about. And then I started speaking to business owners and asked them, have you spoke to a recruiter? Have you dealt with a recruiter? What's been the experience? And they're like, oh, Mike, honestly, I stumble across this recruiter who says they specialise in cybersecurity recruitment, but yet they've never worked in cybersecurity. And when you try and, before you even get to the stage discussing what candidate you need, you have to actually describe cybersecurity to them. So describing cybersecurity to a novice can take an hour at the best of time, to then transition to then tell me what you need. And I just had this light bulb moment where I thought, I wonder if I could set up a recruitment consultancy business where the recruiter has actually got the industry work experience, they've got the hands-on experience to the areas that they specialise in. And that's what got me the transition into recruitment, going from the cyber and intelligence community.
All right.
That's an awesome story.
Thank you.
And I think that you're right at the very end of that. The understanding the industry has to help with the discussion on all sides, right? Even for the people being recruited, this person actually knows what I would have to go through, what I have been through, and so that's got to make it a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, my output from that experience is I do not want another candidate to go through that experience. I mean, I can only really help the cyber community. I've got quite a diverse background, so when I was in intelligence, I of course specialised in cybersecurity. I also managed AI projects, and I was also a qualified data analyst. And obviously I worked in data centres with Microsoft, AWS, security clearance recruitment, and I'm also a qualified project manager. So there's industries that I could support, but I'm just as passionate about cybersecurity as I am about recruitment. Recruitment I've just fell into because I want to repair the damage that's been done. So I'm just as passionate about both, and that's probably the one I'm going to focus the most on. I could assist with data center recruitment, but cybersecurity is where my passion is at.
So why do you think why is there a shortage, right? We talk about that all the time. That's kind of this whole, you and I talking together to get on this podcast talked about, the 2 million personnel gap, right? Why do we have that shortage? What seems to be as you're talking to companies who are trying to find certain people and people who are trying to find the jobs, because I got to believe that there are people that I really want to work in this field, but no one wants to hire me.
Sure. So this is another question I get asked quite often. And what I've done is I've collected as much information to disseminate, disseminate all the information, give an assessment, and draw conclusions. And as the stats are quite staggering. I hope you enjoy stats, because this is going to be a stat field here. But with me being a data analyst, I love a stat. So the first thing I'd look at is the ideology. Is there a real cause for candidates to join the cyber world? So that was the first thing I would assess. You talked about earlier about the situation in the schools. If you go for the educational system, is there that need that's I must join cybersecurity? It's not something you can sort of just accidentally fall into. It's more the passion's got to be there. You want to do something for the greater good. So, and then I would ask, because of the shortage, is cybersecurity independent consultancy companies better suited? Because if you've got this gap, what we've got to also analyse is the gap is going to take so long to close that if we don't close it, is it better to just stop trying to focus on trying to get people through the pipeline and plug the gap with people who are seasonal cybersecurity consultants who have got their own businesses? I guess that'd be my first question to pose to you is...
Repeat the question.
Probably should get subtitles under the bottom there.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So the question I'm asking is there a real cause for candidates to join the cyber world? I'm going to decipher and add more stats that's going to bring light onto this, but is there enough environments where cybersecurity is encouraged?
That's a good question. That's a good one because Paul, I'll let you have that one first. You can take away.
Right. Thanks, Darren.
Sure.
I would say that, is it encouraged? I would argue that you're right. People do have to have a passion. If you go back to, I've already mentioned it once when we were talking about the articles, but episode 2 with our friend Matt Lee, he said, everybody's out there fighting the good fight, and we've got to find people to fight the good fight. My guess is there's a lot of burnout in the profession, right? And so I've been there, I've done that. I don't want to do it again. I want to go find something else. I want to sit on a beach and drink Mai Tais and not have to worry about that. That's probably part of the answer. Is we have to figure out how to not get them burnt out, to get them to stay in the profession, to encourage others to come into the profession.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've got some stats here for you, which kind of supports what you're saying there about the burnout. So in the UK, there's been an increase by 50% in the last 5 years. So 100 firms incorporated in the last 2 years. So this is cybersecurity independent consultancy companies. So the UK's had a 50% increase in the last 5 years. In the US, there is an intelligence gap for how many new companies in the last 5 years. However, as of 2024, there are 11,606, which was a 1.2 increase from 2023. Now, if you look at the numbers, the cyber consultancy industry in the US was estimated to generate 17.6 billion in revenue in 2024, growing at a compound annual growth rate of 3.8% over the past 5 years. So if you're looking at the prize pot of 17.6 billion, that you could have a slice of that pie, or you work for somebody else and you get $150,000 a year, what would you pick?
Yeah.
17 billion.
You'd want to pick. You want to pick the pie of the 17.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we live in the West. There's a lot of and I tied this in with ideology. In the West, there's independent free thinkers. There's more choices. If you look at how many careers that you can do from like to current date 20 years ago, I mean, that's something I should have got a stat for, how many's increased. But there's got to be more careers you can do now than you could do 20 years ago. So you've got more freedom of choice. And as I go through this question, start dissecting it even further, I'm going to draw comparisons to the threat and how their ideology is different. Now, the next thing I'm going to go into is the salary. So there's a low entry level salary in cybersecurity. So the average entry level salary in the US is $70,000. The average across the US is $55,000. And I checked this, and there are trainee firefighter roles on Indeed that pay $94,000 a year and only need a high school diploma. The Marriott Hotel is offering a storekeeper job in Indeed that pays $69,000 a year and you only need a high school diploma. So if you look at the salary incentive, you can only have a high school diploma, you can work as a storekeeper or a trainee firefighter, earn the same or more. You don't have to put yourself through courses, you don't have to put yourself into debt, you could just jump straight into a career and you're earning more money. In the UK, the entry level salary is £30,000, which is $37,000. We are getting robbed in this country when it comes to salaries, that's for sure. And the average salary across the UK is $35,000. So if you join the cybersecurity community in the UK, you're already below the curve. And to give context, a delivery driver, this will be more evident with my UK followers and connections and friends and family that are watching us. They'll know this company, Every. I don't think you've got it in the US. That'd be like the equivalent of like DPT or like Amazon. It's like a delivery service to your house. So a delivery driver with Every makes £33,000, which is $40,000, and all you need is a driver's license. So you can make more as a delivery driver in the UK than entering the cybersecurity world. And that's like, all you need is a driver's license. That's it. And that's the staggering part. Then you go into courses, so you want to go to the educational route. So in the UK, entry-level qualifications, so I've used pen tester as an example. In the UK, entry-level qualifications for a pen tester, like offensive security cleared professionals or certified ethical hacker certification, typically cost between £500 to £2,500, depending on the provider and the course type. In the US, similar qualifications such as OSCP and CH generally cost between $500 to $4,000, and there's additional costs which might include study materials, exam fees, and training boot camps. Then you look at the time it takes to do these certificates. So the CompTIA Security Plus, 1 to 3 months of studying. The Certified Ethical Hacker, usually 3 to 6 months. And the Offensive Security Certified Professional, around 3 to 6 months, depending on prior experience. So you're looking at least 7 months of paying. I mean, if you look for, because this is a US podcast, we use US numbers. So we'll say $500 to $4,000. We'll put it in the average, say $2,000. $2,000 for each course, $6,000, and it's going to take you 7 months at least to do these courses. Doesn't sound appetizing if you wanted to get into the industry, does it?
No, it doesn't. But I think, Michael, something that I have started thinking about as you have been talking about this is, yes, people need to want to do it. You said that earlier. People need to have the desire. But I also think, have we in the industry of cybersecurity complicated things of what is, I want to work in cybersecurity. What does that mean? There's 12 different options, right? We need to make it, there's 3 options. You're either on the offense, you're on the defense, or you're checking people who are doing both, right? Like that's that at the end of the day, maybe is some of it is marketing. Some of it we have to do better at marketing. We have to say, look, it's difficult to get in because there's so many options, but this is really what I want to do, or this is really where I find my passion. And passion's always my favorite value any company or organization has, because if people don't have passion, they don't have a desire to want to do whatever that is. So to your point, you've got to have a want, but we've also made it difficult, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I've raised this concern with cybersecurity business owners a lot, that it gets overcomplicated. There's too much technical jargon that gets used. And I think it needs to be better advertised. And this is not to sound patronizing, but I always say, try and describe cybersecurity as if you're explaining it to a child. So you can do a test, you can explain cybersecurity to your child. If they don't understand it, it's highly likely that your customer or client isn't going to understand it, because their levels of understanding is the same level. They don't know what cybersecurity is. And I kind of always advise that sort of the best stepping stone to explaining it, and this is the way I usually do it, is whoever I'm talking to, whatever industry they're in, I try and tie it with red teaming, blue teaming, purple teaming. So if they work in a certain industry, make it relatable so that it fits their industry. So if you work for law firms, if you work targeting law firms, use something that's law firm related on how to explain red teaming, blue teaming, and purple teaming, and then the person will then start matching patterns and go, right, now that makes sense. But as soon as you start going into red teaming and you're talking about pen testing, you're talking about, or even blue team, you're talking about a SOC, you're talking about a CISO, you're talking about a security analyst. It's like the person is going to go, what are you talking about? I don't understand what you're talking about.
Great point.
So yeah, it gets too overcomplicated, I think. But I've got more here to add. I'll try and wrap this up because I'm going too much detail, I think. But the opportunities. So there's no guarantee of employment. It's unlikely if you step out with all these qualifications, you've done the certificates, and you try and get a job, they can be hindered. And I think one of the big things that hinders an opportunity is the recruitment process of decision makers who are not sure what they are looking for. And businesses are seeking experienced professionals. They're not trying to attract entry level. So it's one of those ones that I think that and this is the ideal world if all the stars match up together, is everybody needs to come together and come up with a conclusion, because at the moment we're all singing off different hymn sheets.
Well, I think the problem is you got companies that's like, I want this person that will create me rainbows that I can ride on unicorns and that poop cotton candy. However, they don't have any idea what the unicorn looks like, the color of the rainbow, or the flavor of the cotton candy. So they don't know what they want. They just want something to fix their problem, right? So how do you assess candidates to kind of fix that? So when people say, I need this, right? Do you go through and say, okay, I think what you really want is this, and I got this guy over here who can do this. So how do you address that, them not knowing they need something, not knowing what that is, but helping them come to the conclusion of, okay, yeah, that's what I need right there?
Yeah, great question. I guess I'm going to give an example. So I not long ago spoke to a company, and what they were asking for was blue teaming, but what they were describing was red teaming. Now, if you work, for example, in the recruitment industry and you specialise in cybersecurity recruitment, and you haven't worked in the industry, you don't know the difference, you're just going to say to the company, just give me the job spec and I'll try and find you blue teaming. Now, the problem you've got there is the candidate's going to think, brilliant, I'm going to do blue teaming, and they tip up and they're doing red teaming, and they go, I'm in the wrong job family, I'm not doing the correct job I'm supposed to be doing. And that's when you end up having a retention issue. So when I'm able to be valuable and give an invaluable insight is if I speak to a business and they're like, hey Mike, can you try and find me a SOC analyst level 1? But then what they're actually describing sounds more like a pen tester. I could be able to say, I could guide them to say, actually, you're asking for the wrong thing, or are you looking for two separate roles here? Because I can find you two separate roles. You can't ask this one person to do both. Or are you actually looking for red and not blue? It can be a tricky conversation. You've got to tread carefully because, people don't like to be showed up and say, oh, you're wrong. But again, this is why I'm on this platform now. This is why I'm on this journey, is to try and educate and restore the cybersecurity talent gap, and try and educate businesses who aren't familiar with cybersecurity on a talent aspect.
Paul, you got a question?
Well, yeah, I do. So, and this goes back to the salary conversation, but let's speak to the business owner for a minute, for the one that listens to this, or for others that want to talk to business owners. Something I always said, and I've said it on this podcast before, when slide number 3 in my cyber presentation, point number 3 says governance has to be bought in, which means governance has to know that it's important, and governance has to give the right resources. I have always said, we've got to stop thinking of cybersecurity as an expense. We've got to stop thinking of technology as an expense, and we have to think of it as a revenue protector. If you do not have this, you are not going to protect the organization. You will not have any customers. You will not have any clients. You will not have any revenue. Stop thinking of it that way. And I would imagine in your position, knowing the difference between red and blue and looking at an organization going, all you have is blue team, right? You're not even set up correctly. I could imagine that business owners need to hear, you're asking for a blue teamer. You've already got 12. You need a red. You need purple. You need other than that, right? And so I think part of it becomes, and when you're talking to business owners, are you communicating that, and what are you hearing from business owners as it relates to what they need, and is it always just a miscommunication?
Not always. No, I think, again, it depends on how you deliver the information. Like I said, you've got to tread carefully, because depending on the person you're speaking to, the more senior they are in an organisation, I found there to be more resistance, because, I don't know, perhaps they've got a mate or a family member that's told them a little bit about cybersecurity and they think they know a little bit, and they're saying, find me the blue teamer. And it's like, if I didn't have integrity, I could just say, yep, thank you for the money, I'll just find you a blue teamer, no problem. So I guess it's all about educating, and it falls back to what we were saying about, is there a cause to join cybersecurity? Where's the education to get people passionate about the industry? So I think it's got to be the same with people who've got businesses. You've got to educate. And some people are open to education. Some people like to be educated, and some people have resistance to it. So you just got to get that balance right.
It's interesting.
But I mean, you said, sorry, Dan, what were you going to say?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
You were saying there about communicating with businesses, like, you know, the threats, like, you know, you could lose money, you could lose company data. I think as well what we've also, and this might be the reason that we get the cause back into the industry. This is what might get people to join. It's all well saying to businesses, you know, yeah, you can lose money, you can lose customer data. You know, if it's the health service, you're going to lose people's medical records, and that can be used for espionage or for threat intelligence. And this kind of leads on to what I was talking about earlier with the ideology of the West and the salary, etc. Then what we're not talking about enough is the threat from the East and the drawn comparisons. This is a threat to national security that what we're looking at. And with, I mean, did you watch the Joe Rogan podcast with Mark Zuckerberg, where he was saying that quantum computing is estimated to be about 10 years out? That is a threat to threat actors, malicious actors. If we are not in a steady position to challenge that, that is a massive threat to national security. So the two main threat actors are China and Russia, of course. So again, the ideology, China is a centralized and state-controlled. Russia is state-centric focused and focused on state priorities. Again, I'm not suggesting we adopt the Eastern ideology, because what I said about the West was we're so free-thinking and about capitalism and stuff like that, whereas in the East, they've not really got that space to make up their own decisions. So that might be the reason there's been an increase in independent cyber security consultancy companies, and there's this gap in the mid-level management. Like I said, that option doesn't exist in Russia and China. If you were to go to Vladimir Putin and say, I've got this bright idea, he'll say, well, you can take your bright idea and stick it where the sunshine where the sun doesn't shine. And this was interesting as well. I looked at the salary for Russia and China. So the entry-level salary in China is 150,000 yuan, and the average salary is 800,000 yuan. The entry level is 150, the average is 80. The entry level salary in Russia is 900,000 ruble, and the average is 600,000 ruble. So the comparisons from entry level to the average in each nation, the US is 21% higher, the UK is 16% below, 60% lower, shock. China is 46% higher, and Russia is 33% higher. So our threat to national security in the West, the East, their entry level to the national average is higher than the West. So there's more of an incentive. Of course, in some environments you don't get the freedom of choice, but at least if you're being told this is what you're going to do, at least you get paid nicely.
But what is 150 yuan equal to?
Great question, Darren, and I probably should have put that on my staff collection. I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that question. I don't know, maybe somebody on LinkedIn can do the conversion and check.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask you a question. I'll do the conversion while you're answering the question. So one of the things, obviously, that employers are concerned about with folks that, you know, hire for your business, right, is, hey, I'm going to pay this money up front to bring this person in. And if I have to train them, and let's say I train them in Splunk or something, right? They suddenly become a Splunk expert in 6 months that I pay for, and then they leave me and go to somewhere else because they can get paid more money. How do you? Now, I know you're kind of disrupting the way that this is all done. So talk about how you do it differently, and why business leaders that want to do this should look to the way you're doing it, because it's no cost really to them at the end of the day. So talk about how you do that.
Yeah, so my business model. So this was identified from speaking to business owners, and I was asking, what are the pain points? You know, what are the challenges you're facing? And You've got the
No,
conversion,
sorry,
haven't
it
you?
was Japanese. It was the wrong number. Keep going. It was the wrong answer.
Just when you've done that big deep breath sigh, I thought you've got the conversion there. And what I could have done is I could set up a recruitment business model like every other recruitment business and just, try to rock it that way. But what I did is I actually listen to customers and clients' pain points. So my business model. So for example, on the East Coast of America, to attract and source a pen tester, it takes 30 to 60 days. I do it in 14 days. If I don't do it in 14 days, I give you your deposit back. So I ask for a 50% deposit up front. If I don't do it, I give your deposit back. And if you're in the US, I give you $1,000 compensation for the inconvenience. That's how confident I am what I do. Wow. So there's 0% risk. If I don't deliver what I promise, you get your money back plus compensation. On the back end, once the hire's been made, I offer an assurance policy. And that is that if the candidate exits your business in the opening 6 months, so it could be for several reasons. It could be failed probation period, they've left you for a competitor, or you've sacked them because they've not been at the standards. I will source and attract another candidate within 14 days, completely free. That's my business model. Because when I spoke to businesses, I found that when they dealt with recruitment businesses, they would say, yeah, we can get you this underwater firefighter who's got red teaming experience and, he's got all these qualifications and he's special forces. And then 2 weeks later, they go, you know what, we actually couldn't find the person you're looking for. And it just gets dropped. There's no apology. There's no yeah, here's some money back. It's just dropped. And this was really annoying businesses. And then what you're also finding is, I talked earlier about, businesses asking for blue team, and what they really need is red team. And the recruitment company will go and find the blue team, drop the person in the business. They go, this is not my job. I am leaving to go to somebody else who's going to actually give me my job. And they exit in 2-3 months. And in the business, what am I going to do? What am I actually going to do? I need to go back to market. I need to spend money on recruitment. I need to spend money on advertisement. I need to go through all that training again. Complete wasted time in the market, wasted money, productivity. It also disrupts projects, etc. So I came up with a business model that I will replace that candidate for free in the opening 6 months.
It's pretty good.
So
also, another pain point that businesses had was they hate variable rates, percentages on the pound and the dollar. Mine's is fixed costs, so it doesn't matter whether it's a junior, mid-level or senior, it's the exact same cost. We've all got our own houses, we've got our own family, our own bills. There's nothing worse than a variable bill. When you don't expect it, it drops on your doormat and you're like, I wasn't expecting this bill. Whereas you'd rather know exactly how much recruitment's going to cost each year. It helps with budgeting as well.
So going back to the salaries real quick. So in China, you said 150,000 won, right? That's equivalent to $21,000. The 80,000 is equivalent to 11,000. In Russia, you said 900,000 rubles.
That's correct. Yeah.
$9,000.
Wow.
Yep. But
wow,
that's the average. I mean, it's still above the average.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the ones making 12 are like, I'm killing it. I am killing it.
Yeah. And again, you can also go further into it with the courses that you can do. So, for example, in China, they have 11 cybersecurity schools that offer more classes on artificial intelligence and machine learning than the 20 US universities certified as centers of academic excellence in cyber operations. So we talked about quantum computing earlier. China is statistically the biggest threat to national security, and they are teaching their students about AI and ML in their cybersecurity skills, and America is lacking on this. So you can see that there's going to be a difference here. We've got 10 years to really build to get to a point of security. If we don't do it in 10 years, China's going to be in a stronger position.
Oh yeah, well, sure. And they recognize that. Paul, you got the last question? That last.
Yeah, let's go with this one. So, percentage-wise, how many of your placements are remote jobs, and how many are in the vicinity, city, in-office jobs. And then also, if you don't mind, just a quick conversation about remote IT workers and the threat to any national security related to remote IT workers.
Yeah. So this is a pain point for businesses because they would rather, and again, this is the cybersecurity business owners that I speak to, or even in the private space, they would rather have their staff on site. However, since the 2020 pandemic, this has shifted where people prefer to work at home and work remote. And I don't really see how you can meet in the middle. If you're, to answer your second question, if you're at home and you get an email that's malicious, there's higher chance that you're going to open it at home than it is if it's in the office, because there's easier ways to get it into your inbox at home than it is in the office. Right. Not to say it wouldn't happen in the office, but it's just certainly easier to get it there. So there's higher risk for working remote. Luckily, the cybersecurity professionals that I've spoke to that are seeking opportunities, they've all been happy with working on site. I think they've been sensible enough to see that it doesn't work working remote. So, touch wood, I've not had that problem yet.
Okay.
All right. So with that, as I like to say, Michael, and Paul's sick of me saying this every week, but we're here for a good time, not a long time. So let's take a look at your website so people can know where to go to find more about your company. There we go. See if I can share that right.
I'm just going to chuck one last stat out there.
Okay, please. Yes. Let's go. One last stat.
Because this is the alarming one where I talked about national security. So, in 2024, cybersecurity professionals is 1.3 million in the US. In China, there's 600,000. The US numbers decreased by 50,000 from 2023 to 2024. China's numbers increased by 50,000. If that trend continues by 2034, which quantum computing is estimated to be on the market, you will find that China will be in a personnel stronger position than the US. And the US budgeting for cybersecurity in 2028 is $113.8 billion, and China is 23.56. So the US is spending 4.5 times more than China, but yeah, China's going to have more personnel. That's the alarming part. I think this is something we need to focus more on, is the threat to national security, as opposed to your medical records can get stolen, which obviously is it's more for the offensive, which would be in the public space for the government, the intelligence agencies. The offensive is there's the threat to national security.
Great point. Well, here is Michael's website, StarApex.com or StarApexRecruitment.com. So you are in the UK, but you service the US, correct?
Yes. So the UK, the US, and Canada.
Okay. Super. And there's a contact page here. You can reach out to him. And if you can find him on LinkedIn, look for Michael McQuade on LinkedIn. He's just started to post a lot of video content. So if you like Marvel Comics and Star Wars, that's always in the background. So that's always a thumbs up for me. I like it.
Michael, this was a great conversation. Thank you for giving back to the industry. Thank you for using your expertise to try and help close that gap and get people excited about this profession and this industry. And I think it's something that more people in all of our positions need to do. And so thank you very much for all that you do for the industry.
Yep. Yeah, thank you very much. What I will say is sort of one last thing is, if there is any educational institutions, public sector, private sector that's watching these videos, I'm also open to collaborating with all three to look at solutions to bridge the talent gap. Awesome. So I'm open to all suggestions. So yeah, thank you again for having me on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for coming on. You want to say hi to your mom? Yes, no, maybe.
Hi, Mom. I'll give a special shout out as well to my little brother that's going to be watching this tomorrow. He'll love it. So hello, Kian. All
right, Michael. Thanks so much. Awesome. We'll be in touch with him.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you, gents. Have a good evening.
You too. All right, Paul. So what do you got coming up this week? Next week? Anyway.
This week, we've got a roundtable tomorrow for CPAs who handle technology or play in the tech. We call it tech savvy CPAs. We're going to be doing our roundtable next week, where there is another presentation. Then I'm going to be up in your neck of the woods, first part of February, talking to healthcare management association folks about cybersecurity. Again, the conversation just cannot stop. It cannot. It has to continue. So, what about you? Besides the whole shoulder thing.
Yeah. So trying to recover from that. The splint and the sling the splint comes off at least next Thursday. But as I mentioned yesterday, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I recently resigned from my current position. I gave them 2 weeks notice so that I can start this little thing, Gold Shield Cyber Investigations and Consulting. So what exactly that looks like, hard to say. It's still trying to figure out who I'm looking to serve and what I'm looking to provide to them, but it's the same thing. Keep continuing to find people to fight the fight so they don't become victims, right? All the stuff we talk about here, trying to use some of that knowledge and do my own thing. So that's my approach. And I thank you for you offered me to be on one of your panels coming up February 7th. That's right.
So we're going to have another good discussion, but good luck with Gold Shield. I'm sure, like everything else you've done, it'll do well.
Here's hoping. All right, Paul, thanks so much. We'll be back again in 2 weeks with exactly what we don't know yet, but we'll come up with something.
Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Tactical Cyber Podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of their respective employers. If you have thoughts, comments, or suggestions on the Tactical Cyber Podcast, email Darren at thecyberguy.com. You can also follow Darren and Paul on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Darren Mott or linkedin.com/in/Paul M. Perry CPA. Paul Perry is a member of Warren Averett CPAs and Advisors, where he leads the firm's risk advisory and assurance services team, a group dedicated to optimizing businesses' financial, operational, and technology controls so that organizations can make strategic choices for sustained growth. Learn more at warrenaverett.com. Stay safe, stay secure, and we'll see you next time.